Alright, what's poppin', people? We're back. And today, I bring you the Eelektross Showcase. Now, Eelektross is a Pokemon that has been good in Inu in the past, all the way back in the Black and White era, so a decade plus ago. Potentially older than some of you. I don't know if I've got viewers that are in the single digits age group. But if I do, then yeah. The last time Eelektross was good in Inu, you might have not been born yet, which is really, really funny to think about. But Eelektross, other than in Black and White, where it's like an A+, A rank threat, it really has never been very good in Inu. In large part because its stats are just kind of not very good. Like, when you look at a Pokemon in general, usually these very evenly distributed stats, dudes, don't end up being super potent. Because they kind of just don't have a niche. It's like you just balance it all out and you say, okay, do something. You've got the mythicals, and those end up being really good, of course, for other reasons. You know, they'll have higher stat totals in general, they'll have better move pools, better typings even, in some cases. And I mean, even when you take into account move pools, sometimes it's just like signature move. So Eelektross doesn't really fall into that group. Because its stats are just kind of like, okay, we're kind of offensive, but we're also really, really slow. And then we're kind of bulky, and we are, you know, no weaknesses to any type, because of Levitate plus electric typing. But the defensive stats aren't the greatest. So it's always kind of struggled to have a niche as the power level of Pokemon has gotten higher and higher. But that's changed this generation of Inu, and it's actually been a pretty solid threat so far, so I want to cover some of the sets. Now, the reason Eelektross first started rising up in usage was to help with Oricorio Pom-Pom. Naturally, that's been out of the picture for a while now, but as Sword and Shield, as Scarlet and Violet Inu has continued developing, we've seen Eelektross still solidify its spot in the tier, in large part because of Sandaconda's prevalence. You cannot paralyze electric types. That is a change that was made to Pokemon some generation ago. And Eelektross is an incredible Pokemon because it walls the most common Sandaconda sets. Right now you see a lot of Stealth Rock, Earthquake, Glare, Rest Sandaconda variants running around. And any Eelektross set will just wall that. And so naturally, when Sandaconda's on like half of the teams in Inu right now, and for good reason, Glare is an insane move, Eelektross is actually just very useful on a game-by-game basis. You have a very easy target to switch in on repeatedly and just do whatever you want based on your sets. Whether it's a Coil set or one of these Assault Vest sets, Eelektross just has the leverage in a lot of games to actually find turns to do stuff. And that could be a big determining factor in how good a Pokemon is it easy to find the positions you need to achieve your goal. So, Coil Eelektross, of course, is the set that I'm showcasing first. I like Terra Steel on it, because Steel's a really good defensive typing. A little bit more useful overall than Electric, even though you do gain some weaknesses with Steel. I find that it's a little bit better overall, because it also allows you to check a few more Pokemon. So, in particular, you've got Frostmoth that you're now checking. You also still retain your flying resistance, and so if you do manage to boost a bit, you can even still tank hits from the likes of Honchkrow, your Bombardiers, etc. And Steel is just really nice for teams in general, especially this generation where Inu just doesn't have Steel types. Being able to use your Terra to become a Steel type can actually be kind of cool. It's kind of the same with ground types, where you see a lot of Pokemon that'll just be Terra Ground, and you're like, okay, well, if I'm not running Sandaconda, I guess I'll have Terra Ground Oricorio Bale or something. It's kind of the same idea there. But Coil Eel's really cool too, because there's not a ton that's stopping it if you let it get boosts. And that's kind of where the Terra Steel comes in too, because if a Pokemon is boosting up its physical bulk, naturally you're going to want to hit it on the special side. And Steel is notorious for walling a lot of the special attackers just by typing. So if we look at Inu's common special attackers, you've got like a Bomb of Snow. That's not going to have too great a time versus you. Clawitzer can have Aura Sphere, but if I'm remembering the calcs correctly, you're O-code only by Aura Sphere. So any other move, it can't go for, which does make it at least easier to play around from there. You've got Dudunsparce, that's wholly walled by this unless it's like Flamethrower, and I believe you might still not win that? I'd have to check. Bara Giraffe doesn't beat you, Frostmoth doesn't beat you unless it's like Terra Fire, Jolteon could be a little dicey, but Drain Punch Recovery should let you win the 1v1, and etc, etc. It's just a very favorable typing to turn into. Really, the only common, not even common, the only kind of common threat that you may be worried about is a fire type. So like Pyroar, you know, an Oricorio Bale, if it hasn't Terra'd yet, could still hit you super effectively. You could be worried about a Houndoom even. But other than Oricorio, a lot of these fire types aren't very common right now. Maybe a Zoroark, but that's not OHKOing you, it has to flinch you with Dark Pulse. And so this mod just has a lot of leverage around teams, because if they seed too many turns at all, and oftentimes the amount of turns they concede is like 1 before they're in dire straits, it could snowball games out of control really quickly. And of course we got Dragon Tail here. Dragon Tail might seem a little interesting. A lot of it's just to help with Coil Sandaconda. So Coil Conda is actually able to kinda trade 1v1 with Eelektross. And Dragon Tail synergizes really well with Spikes as well, while making sure to phase a bulky setup super like your Coil Condas to make sure that they don't just try and set up versus you and maybe trade. The same could be said about a Calm Mind Dudunsparce. Even a Coil Dudunsparce. You have Dragon Tail and you can phase it as it's trying to set up. And with how good Quillfish synergizes with Eelektross, in general I do really like how they work defensively together. You end up with a very potent core there. Quill sets up the spikes, Eelektross has Dragon Tails to not only dissuade bulky setup supers, but also just rack up that hazards damage, which is really nice. And then just quick EVs, I mean this is just speed for Vaporeon, so if they don't have any investment, you could outrun before they haze you. And then I have seen Dragon as a Terra typing too. I haven't really vibed with it though. I think the incentive is just it gives you stab on Dragon Tail, and so if you're running a Spikes build, it's really nice to be able to get even more damage every time you phase. But me personally, I do just prefer Terra Steel, especially because of how it synergizes with Levitate. And then we got Assault Vest. Now I have 2 variants that I want to cover real quick. Assault Vest Steel isn't as common in my experience now, but I think it's still a pretty strong pick. So here's one that's with Terra Electric and a little bit more of an offensive EV spread. To me, I do think there is some benefit to tapping into Eel's wall breaking power. Its coverage is insane, and unless a team has like a Chansey or Umbreon, it's usually pretty hard to pivot around. And even for those, if you really feel so obligated, you could run like Close Combat Eel and then go with a mild nature instead. You don't need the physical defense on this set too much. It does put you into certain KO thresholds with less chip damage, needed, but CC is okay to help with your Chansey and Umbreon, so you could close combat them on the switch, and then Volt Switch as they're forced to recover, and it helps keep your momentum up. And Terra Electric I like on this more offensive set, because it just helps your wall breaking power. You get an even stronger Thunderbolt, maybe stronger Volt Switches. I think you could maybe go with like a defensive Terra here, like Terra Ghost if you're just trying to catch up a Simian, but I don't feel it's that necessary. On the contrary though, I think with a bulkier EV spread, there's a lot more incentive to go with these defensive Terras, i.e. again, Terra Steel. So an AV Eelektross with Terra Steel is a lot nicer into stopping something like a Frostmoth, or maybe one of the Oricorios. Admittedly now with Powell being more common, not Powell, Bale, my bad, I confused the ones that aren't as used. Terra Steel's not as good because if you Terra, well, their Rev Dance is super effective. But versus Powell, you still like the Terra Steel. Of course, like we had said, Frostmoth, you like that. Dudunsparce, you like this. It's just like with Coil Eel, where Steel is so good defensively. And then, of course, I think Giga Drain you always want with an AVmon. If you can afford recovery on it, that's really cool. Thunderbolt and Volt Switch just for good damage. Dragon Tail here, because phasing some of these mons is the only way you actually stop them, which can get dicey if they're last mon. So I present to you as well Acid Spray as an option. Acid Spray is pretty cool because it's like how we ran Goodra with Acid Spray, where now you just 1v1 these special defense boosting sweepers. you know, they're getting stronger with their Quiver Dance, sure, or, you know, in Dunsparce's case even, Calm Mind, but you prevent them from getting super bulky as well, and because even without investment, you're still pretty strong. Also, let me just fix the nature here. I do not know why I would put careful. And because of the bulk we've got, we're not going to really be taking too much damage, at least immediately. Our Terra type can help flip certain matchups, make them a little bit more favorable. And you can still, like, actively threaten those Pokemon, which I find pretty nice. And honestly, even Acid Spray, you could even still run the offensive EV spread with this, like, you know, do this modest. And you're even kind of a little bit more effective as a stall breaker in that case. Again, this is more just like an insurance policy when you run the bulkier EV spread. That's gonna be it for this Eelektross showcase, guys. I think it's very fun when you see an older Pokemon that once was really good come back generations later to remind all the young bucks, hey, back in my day, I ruled the world. I hope y'all enjoyed. You can always feel free to leave comments telling me what other Pokemon you'd like to see spotlights of. I hope you're enjoying your day. I don't feel the greatest today, so I'm hoping to feel better later on in the day, tomorrow. So I hope y'all are staying healthy, staying safe, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.